Hello everyone, it's me again. Today I will recap the movie Oppenheimer. This is the world's first atomic bomb. It has extremely powerful destructive power. Its creator is a scientist named Oppenheimer. He created 3 atomic bombs, one for testing, and the other 2 were dropped on Japan, ending World War II, forcing Japan to surrender unconditionally. So to know how this bomb was made, please watch today's recap. In 1954, Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, faced a closed trial from Strauss, the director of the U.S. Department of Energy, aiming to destroy his reputation as the most influential physicist of the era. Everything must be told from the beginning. Oppenheimer was born in New York, and because he had Jewish blood, he was extremely intelligent and had been outstanding since childhood. In 1924, when Oppenheimer was 22 years old, he excelled as a student at Cambridge University. Now, he was worried about studying and missing home, and was tormented by hallucinations about the universe, physics and stars, so he always went to class in a daze. His instructor was Patrick Blackett, a teacher who was only a few years older than him, but extremely strict. Today, Oppenheimer wanted to go to a lecture by another professor, Niels Bohr, who taught quantum physics. But Blackett punished him by cleaning the lab, because he was absent-minded during class. Oppenheimer could only do it quickly to be on time for the lecture. Because he was so angry, when he saw the apple on the teacher's desk, he had a terrible idea, which was to inject cyanide into the apple, then put it back in its original place, wanting to poison his teacher. But the next day, he woke up early, rushed to the laboratory, wanting to get the poisoned apple back. He was horrified to see Professor Niels Bohr holding the apple, and said that he was very impressed with Oppenheimer's question in the lecture yesterday, so he introduced Oppenheimer to the University of Göttingen in Germany, to learn more about the theory operation. When Niels Bohr was about to bite the apple, Oppenheimer grabbed it, and threw it away, then used the excuse that the apple was wormy. Finally, he completed his doctorate in Germany, and became friends with a fellow scientist, Rabbi. He said that in Germany, scientists were not welcomed, because most of them were of Jewish origin. After that, Oppenheimer returned to his country, started working as a lecturer at Berkeley University, teaching quantum theory. There, he met Dr. Laren, who was building a machine in the lab. They talked and introduced each other, and he also helped everyone complete it. After that, Oppenheimer started his first class, with only 1 student, but thanks to his knowledge and teaching skills, he quickly attracted many students to the class. He organized a presentation for everyone about a space monster, which is invisible to the naked eye, and that is the black hole. When a star can no longer create its own fission reaction, it is also the time when it dies, and creates a supernova explosion. At that time, the star's core collapses, forming an infinitely small point, and a black hole is born. Any matter that flies past, or even light, is swallowed by this monster. People cannot see a black hole with the naked eye, but can detect it, thanks to the traces left behind. He had a special relationship with a hot girl named Jean Tadlock. Oppenheimer told Jean that he had tried to kill his professor at Cambridge. The two officially entered into an ambiguous relationship. One day, he and his brother and colleagues went camping. They chose this deserted place, so that they could see the stars clearly. The next day, at the university, one of his students, Angels, told him about Hahn and Strassmann successfully splitting the uranium nucleus in Germany. Knowing that they bombarded atoms with neutrons, he said that it was impossible. But very quickly, he realized that in the process, neutrons evaporated and could be used to split uranium atoms. He immediately thought of an atomic bomb. That night, Oppenheimer invited Jean to a party, but she did not want a formal relationship with him, and through the bouquet of flowers, he gave her into the trash. One day, Richard and Dr. Bohr came to congratulate him on the publication of his paper on black holes, but at this time, the news of Hitler's invasion of Poland was also widespread. On the other hand, Oppenheimer once met Kitty, a married woman, who was also a member of the Communist Party. He was struck by love at first sight with her. For a handsome, polite, and exceptionally intelligent man, she quickly fell in love with him. The two often met and talked to each other. Unexpectedly, the two secretly dated for a while, and Kitty became pregnant. Oppenheimer also ended his relationship with Jean, then decided to go to Kitty's house to tell her husband directly about their relationship. After that, Kitty divorced her husband and married him. One day, while he was teaching, Laren stormed in with an angry face. He said that Oppenheimer's contact with the Communist Union would cause the Union to not let him participate in the upcoming project. Specifically, Einstein and Szilard sent Roosevelt a letter to warn that Germany might successfully build a nuclear bomb. They needed a project to guard against attacks from the Nazis. At this time, Lewis Strauss, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, invited Oppenheimer to work. He was also a very ambitious person. Here, the male lead had the opportunity to meet his idol, Albert Einstein. Not knowing what the two talked about, Einstein immediately left without even looking at Leslie Groves. This made him extremely angry, suspecting that Oppenheimer had badmouthed him. The next day, Major General Leslie Groves, who oversaw the construction of the Pentagon and directed the Manhattan Project, came to see Oppenheimer. He asked Oppenheimer to join the Manhattan Atomic Bomb Project as a consultant to manage the bomb's manufacturing process, with the noble goal of destroying Nazi Germany and bringing peace to the world. Of course, Oppenheimer immediately agreed. Thus, a huge project of human scale was launched. To complete such an unimaginable goal, Oppenheimer decided to gather a group of scientists to work together. And this was a top-secret job, not to be known to the Soviet Union. Those related to the Communist Party would not be allowed to participate, except for Oppenheimer, as his younger brother and wife were both party members. The site of the research facility was a desert located in Los Alamos, New Mexico. The U.S. government even built a town here to serve the group of researchers. Oppenheimer decided to divide everyone into 4 groups. The first group was mathematicians, whose job was to calculate the size and destructive power of a nuclear explosion. The second group was physicists, who specialized in preparing uranium-235 and plutonium, elements suitable for carrying out a chain reaction of fission. The third group was soldiers whose job was to ensure security, preventing information from leaking to the outside. And the last group was logistics. The operating principle of an atomic bomb is very simple, which is to use the energy released from the fission of nuclei. However, to make the nuclei fission, it is necessary to create extremely high pressure. During this process, a scientist, and also a close friend of Oppenheimer, refused to participate, because when the bomb was dropped, innocent people would also be affected. But Oppenheimer said, if the Nazis created it first, the consequences would be even more terrible. Finally, he convinced his friend. Oppenheimer had to wear civilian clothes instead of military uniforms, because they were scientists, not soldiers. Oppenheimer and his colleagues had to create a small explosion inside the atomic bomb to start the chain reaction. Very quickly, the initial results came. The physicist prepared small amounts of uranium-235 and plutonium, and Oppenheimer's group worked on making small bombs to act as detonators for nuclear bombs. Just as everyone was on the verge of a conclusion, a mathematician named Teller calculated a worrying result, that in the process of a chain reaction, the explosion could increase exponentially, from 1 nucleus to 2, and 2 to 4, and so on to infinity, with terrible destructive power. Combined with the hydrogen gas on Earth, it would continuously explode, and could destroy the whole world. Teller proposed replacing the atomic bomb with a hydro bomb to avoid this disaster. Teller's calculations made scientists unable to believe it. From the goal of building a bomb to win against Nazi Germany, it now led to the prospect of destroying the whole world. Oppenheimer was confused and worried. He immediately sought Einstein's opinion. Einstein believed that the probability of this happening according to Teller's calculations was extremely low, because they needed a lot of energy to maintain the fission chain reaction. But what if it still happened? If he was afraid, Oppenheimer could stop what he was doing. After returning, Oppenheimer said that Teller's equation was wrong, so he rejected Teller's proposal to build a hydro bomb. But he did not know that he had been hated by the mathematician. Teller left the project, despite Oppenheimer's efforts to keep him. Thus, the Manhattan Project began in 1939, employing more than 4,000 scientists and 130,000 workers, costing nearly $2 billion, equivalent to more than $30 billion today. It was completed, a spherical bomb with a core of plutonium, produced with great care, by bombarding U-238 with subatomic particles. The U-238 atoms, absorbing a subatomic particle, caused a series of nuclear changes. The shell was a special chemical explosive, used to trigger nuclear fission. Now all that was left was to test the bomb and complete the mission. They transported the bomb to a desert in New Mexico, carefully placing it on a 20-high tower, so that its explosive power would be at its peak, because it would not be obstructed by the terrain. The observatory was divided into 4 directions, about 20 kilometers away, so that the explosion could be observed best. July 16, 1945, was set as the day of the test, and Oppenheimer called it Trinity, because he and his colleagues had built 3 atomic bombs. However, that day a rather large storm came, making everyone extremely worried. Oppenheimer was still very confident. He knew that the storm would pass the next morning. As he said, everyone finished preparing, and it was already night. The people below began to lie down in the shelter, while the group on the tower put on welding goggles to avoid the light burning their corneas. As soon as the bomb switch was turned on, a terrible explosion immediately occurred. Even though they were very far away, the shock wave from the explosion still spread, causing dust to fly everywhere. Oppenheimer gaped at the scene before him, with an expression that was unclear whether it was joy or fear, because he had created a real hell on Earth. Regardless of his hidden thoughts, everyone gathered to celebrate this success that was recorded in history. Oppenheimer's career was also at the peak of glory. The US government also confiscated the remaining 2 atomic bombs, thinking that they were about to overthrow Nazi Germany and open up a new peace for humanity, but everyone was surprised by the German surrender. And the leader Hitler had sacrificed himself. The 2 bombs became useless, they could not attack the Soviet Union, and if left for too long, they will be expired. Unexpectedly, the Japanese fascists suddenly attacked Pearl Harbor, killing the entire US Pacific Naval Fleet. US President Thomas decided to give these 2 bombs to Japan. Representatives of the 2 cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki stood up to receive them on August 6 and 9, 1945. The terrible disaster of the mushroom cloud, which took the lives of more than 200,000 people, and many more deaths later, due to the effects of radiation, forced the Japanese fascists to surrender unconditionally. While the Americans were celebrating their victory, Oppenheimer was filled with regret. Standing before the crowd cheering and praising him for successfully leading the Manhattan Project, he could not even smile. The guilt of the hell on earth that he had caused for the innocent Japanese people still haunted him day after day. Because of his great contributions, he was soon granted an audience with President Truman. He told Oppenheimer to continue to operate and develop the Los Alamos facility into a nuclear research center, ensuring that he would not have to bear any responsibility for its destructive power. But he did not agree, and even suggested that Truman limit the use of nuclear weapons. Thinking that Oppenheimer was weak, the president stopped talking to him. Later, he stood up and called on the scientific community to put pressure on the US government not to let them act arbitrarily, considering human lives as trash. However, in the context of the tense Cold War with the Soviet Union, his stance became controversial. The government suspected Oppenheimer because he was accused of having links with the communist left because of his love affair with a member of the Communist Party USA, not to mention that both his wife and brother were party members. The Energy Agency chairman Strauss immediately took advantage of these accusations, coming up with a plan to destroy his reputation. This would open up Strauss's political path. Through a simple administrative procedure, Strauss sent the accusation of Oppenheimer's treason to the FBI. He quickly appealed. Strauss immediately appointed a panel with Roger Robb as prosecutor. This was a closed hearing, so no reporters or evidence could be used against them. Associates, who had had previous grudges against Oppenheimer, were also invited. Teller, bitter about his rejection of his hydrogen bomb plan, testified that he lacked confidence in Oppenheimer. The result was already predetermined. The panel revoked his security clearance. The plan to bring him down had succeeded, damaging his public image and limiting his influence on nuclear policy. However, Strauss's plan soon backfired when Colonel David Hill testified against him. David Hill also revealed Strauss's personal agenda against Oppenheimer, a petty grudge 6 years earlier. Thanks to this, Oppenheimer escaped charges of treason against the United States. However, the judges unanimously found him untrustworthy and unfit to participate in the country's top-secret projects. After losing in the trial, Strauss was denied an important cabinet position by the Senate. In 1963, President Johnson awarded Oppenheimer the Enrico Fermi Award, in a gesture of political rehabilitation, and his reputation is also evident. In a flashback, Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein talking in 1947, Einstein told him that it was his turn to face the consequences of his achievements. Oppenheimer closed his eyes and saw the image of fire covering the planet's surface, forming a ring of fire that burned the Earth. The movie ends here. Scientist Oppenheimer's original wish was to end the war, so that many people could escape suffering. But when the experiment was successful, he did not expect that he himself had brought the door to hell to Earth. Even though he had achieved great success, was he happy with his creation? The answer is probably only known to him. Thank you very much for your support, so that the channel can develop as it is today. If you find it interesting, please give me a like and a comment about this movie. Especially, please subscribe to the channel to follow my movie recap. See you again, my dear friends.